So we as women have a lot of choices to make in our daily lives. Do we want to wake up early and shower, or sleep in and use dry shampoo and body spray? Do we want to wear cute jeans or comfy leggings? Do we want a trim body or tacos? But one question we seem to deal with constantly throughout our lives is if we want to use tampons, pads, or something else. It's a topic I've thought about a lot since first starting my period about 16 years ago. Like a very large percentage of women my age, I tried a few different options before finally deciding on the one I liked best: tampons. Tampons are getting a lot of heat these days as other, more sustainable products pop up as available options. But are they as bad as people say? If you want to come along with me as I take a closer look into tampons and the tampon industry, keep watching. So the US currently has one of the largest numbers of tampon users in the world, only topped by Germany and Austria. The specific numbers are a little hard to get right since there's such a stigma around periods, especially in the US. But current numbers say that around 70% of menstruating women use tampons at least sometimes. 98% of menstruating women say that they use a combination of pads and tampons. Only 2 to 3% of menstruating women currently use some form of reusable product, like menstrual cups, washable pads, or sponges. So our first question has to be, why do people like tampons? Well, the reasons are different for everyone, but the consensus seems to be that they're easy to use, they're usually comfortable to wear, and they're easy to dispose of. People like that they can wear them and no one but them has to know. I'm not going to get into the huge stigma people have, again, especially in the US, when it comes to periods, because, man, that would make for a long video. But suffice it to say that a huge amount of people, even women, find periods and period products gross and uncomfortable to talk about. Because of this, women like products that are easily concealable, whether that's in a pocket or a purse, or even when they're being worn. So if tampons are so great, what's not to like? In 2010, a small study was performed on 160 women to see what they liked and disliked about pads and tampons. In this study, 54% of the pad-using women said that they just found tampons uncomfortable. 40% said that they worried about toxic shock syndrome. 27% said they didn't know how to insert them or worried about inserting them properly. And 13% said that they just found tampons unnatural. On the other end of the spectrum, a whopping 71% of the tampon users said that using pads felt like wearing a diaper. As far as menstrual cups and reusable products go, women who dislike them almost unanimously state their simple reasoning to be, they're gross. For clarity's sake, I will say that the majority of these women have not tried reusable products and so are just going off their assumptions rather than any actual data. The main reason women are making the switch away from tampons now, though, is that they want something sustainable, cost-effective, and free of actual or perceived harmful chemicals. Because feminine hygiene products are regulated and approved as Class II medical devices by the Food and Drug Administration, manufacturers aren't required to fully disclose what goes into them. In 2017, New York Representative Carolyn Maloney introduced legislation to study the health effects of feminine hygiene products and to promote transparency in regards to feminine hygiene product ingredients. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, as was the case the other 8 times that Representative Maloney tried to introduce the bill since 1997. In doing research for this video, I checked out the FDA's website to see firsthand what they had to say about tampons and tampon safety. I learned that they do indeed classify tampons as medical devices. But medical devices is a pretty broad term. What does that actually mean? According to the FDA themselves, a device is
an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, contrivance, implant, in vitro reagent, or other similar or related article, including a component part or accessory which is recognized in the official Bashel formulary or the United States Pharmacopoeia or any supplement to them, intended for use in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in man or other animals, or intended to affect the structure of any function of the body of man or other animals, and which does not achieve its primary intended purposes through chemical action within or on the body of man or other animals, and which is not dependent upon being metabolized for the achievement of its primary intended purposes.
Whew. So that's a lot of legalese that basically means that they qualify a medical device as something that isn't a drug but is used in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. Judging by only this definition, you may be confused as to why tampons qualify. You may even be thinking that something about it sounds shisty. Looking back though, this was originally done by the FDA to more heavily regulate tampons in the midst of a crisis. To fully explain that, I want to take you back a bit to the earlier days of tampons. No one is 100% sure where and when the first tampon was used. Some say that it was ancient Rome, where they believe tampons may have been made out of wool. Some say that the ancient Egyptians fashioned disposable tampons from softened papyrus. Still others say that tampons existed all over the world in various times, and were made of everything from lint wrapped around lightweight wood, to paper, to vegetable fibers, to rolled up grass. I'm willing to guess that as long as there have been menstruating women, there have been some version of feminine hygiene products. In the 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries, tampons were frequently used for non-menstrual purposes, such as a gynecological surgical aid, as a military wound care device, and even as a contraceptive. Tampon legend has it that in the early 1920s, a Kimberly-Clark employee poked holes in a condom and filled it with the absorbent filling used in commercial Kotex pads, and pitched it to his father, a medical consultant for the company, as a menstrual device. Unfortunately, his father shut down his idea immediately, which set commercially available tampons back over 10 years. Finally, in 1929, a physician named Earl Cleveland Haas became bothered by the discomfort his wife and female patients said they felt using traditional menstrual pads. A female friend of his gave him the answer by telling him about how she used a sponge inserted into her vagina to absorb menstrual flow. This gave Haas the idea of using compressed cotton and sewed cord with telescoping paper tubes. He obtained a patent in 1933 and combined the terms tampon and vaginal packs to come up with Tampax. Tampax finally arrived on store shelves in the mid-1930s and was as much of a period game changer as you might imagine. They weren't a solid success at first though, because a lot of people thought that touching the vaginal area was a bit scandalous, as well as believing that tampons might break the hymen or bring young girls orgasmic pleasure. Luckily for tampon manufacturers though, tampons started to really take off as women needed to be away from the home during World War II. In 1945, the Journal of the American Medical Association published its first substantial research on tampons. Meanwhile, in Germany, non-applicator tampons, also known as digital tampons, were first brought onto the scene and called the OB tampons. Throughout the 60s and 70s, tampon development soared. Many different types and brands were developed, but the names and slogans focused mostly on being feminine and keeping menstruation a secret. In 1971, Playtex developed their first deodorant tampon, which caused allergic reactions like crazy. Even still, by 1973, 70% of US women considered tampons part of their hygiene routine. Unfortunately, this is when things started to get rough for tampon users. In 1975, Playtex introduced a tampon called Rely. It was a fresh idea on the tampon and was designed to expand both widthwise and lengthwise. Not a bad thought, but it was made entirely of synthetic materials, one such being an ingredient that made the tampon super duper absorbent. You can probably imagine where I'm going with this part. Some women would wear one Rely tampon for their whole period, which of course we know now is really not a good idea. Around that same time, in 1976, the FDA realized that tampons should be a bit more heavily regulated, and so decided to label them as medical devices, rather than under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that they had previously been included in. Interestingly enough, the year after this switch, the FDA began requiring cosmetics to list their ingredients on their packaging, something medical devices such as tampons avoided. Rely and later other versions of super absorbent tampons made their way to the market, all manufactured with fancy new synthetic materials. It was 1978 when the first few cases of toxic shock syndrome were reported to the CDC. There were 55 cases in total between October of 1979 and May of 1980, with 7 of them being fatal. In looking into these cases, the CDC discovered that Rely had been the primary tampon used by the affected women. During the rest of 1980, a total of 812 TSS cases were reported, 38 of which were fatal. By June of '83, more than 2,200 total cases of TSS had been reported to the CDC. people were finally starting to see the problem. 1989 was a big year for tampons. The FDA ordered tampon manufacturers to implement a standardized system of absorbency ratings, with the max level much lower than what most women were using. Also that year, a paper was finally published linking the synthetic materials tampons were being made with to the cases of TSS. These synthetic materials provided a fertile environment for the toxigenic bacterium Staphylococcus aureus that causes TSS. Luckily, cases of TSS did start to slow down around that time, and that decline continued into the 1990s when the tampon industry began moving away from dioxin-producing chlorine gas bleaching methods to using other elemental chlorine-free or totally chlorine-free bleaching processes. These processes don't completely eliminate the dioxin, but they do diminish it down to trace levels. At this time, the incidence of TSS relating to tampons is estimated to be between 1 and 3 women per every 100,000, much lower than the 6 to 7 per every 100,000 that they saw in the early 80s. Although the tampon industry has improved leaps and bounds since then, I do think they still have a long way to go. I really believe that being transparent about their ingredients and processes could help in a lot of ways, most importantly in making their customers feel safe in using their products. The reason most people switch to organic products is that they feel safer with the ingredients. If traditional tampons afforded that same transparency, I'm relatively sure that a lot of their customers would stay put. I know I say this a lot, but please don't rely on any single source for info on this or any other subject. I want to trust businesses, I really do, but unfortunately, pretty much all businesses care about padding their wallets or at least making sure their business succeeds more than worrying about you, the consumer. If your only verification of something is from a business's website, I urge you to try to find some other sources. Don't let the big tampon industry or the new organic startups talk you into making a switch or staying put if you aren't comfortable with that. Do your own research and figure out what works best for you. In the end, we all have to make choices, whether that comes down to our morning routine or our feminine hygiene products. All we can do is make the best choice we can with the information we're given. If you learned something new with this video, or made a drinking game out of how many times I said the word tampon, hopefully you didn't do that, please go ahead and hit the like button down below. This video took a closer look at the tampon industry, but the next video will be taking a closer look at the tampons themselves, as well as comparing price, absorbency, and overall ease of use. I would love it if you wanted to stick around for that and more by hitting the subscribe button as well. If you're a social media lover, here are the links to my social media fun. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
This was recording, by the way.
Yeah. Awesome.
You got all your messages taken care of. Ready to go.
Yeah, I didn't actually put anything in this. It's just decoration.
Anyway.
Okay.
And back to tampons. Alright. Very serious.
Yeah.
Serious subject.
All right. There's other more sustainable options. Nope. That cause. I can say Staphylococcus aureus, but I can't say causes. No.
Hold that pose. That's not holding it.
Oh.
Freeze!